So back to Glenn Gould. Gould makes a proposition. Imagine if you improvised in the style of Haydn. I've just had to go at improvising in the style of Haydn, realised it's really difficult to do. Let's go back to what he has to say next. But now, let us imagine that the improviser decided to inform the listener that this was not a work of Haydn, though it very much resembled Haydn, but was in fact a work by Mendelssohn. The reaction to this bit of news would run something along the lines of, well, a pleasant trifle, obviously old-fashioned, but certainly shows a good command of an earlier style. In other words, bottom drawer Mendelssohn. But one last examination of this hypothetical piece, let us assume that instead of attributing it to Haydn or to any later composer, the improviser were to insist that it was a long-forgotten and newly discovered work by none other than Antonio Vivaldi, a composer who was by 75 years Haydn's senior. I venture to say that with that condition in mind, this work would be greeted as one of the true revelations of musical history, a work that would be accepted as proof of the far-sightedness of this great master, who managed in this one incredible leap to bridge the years that separate the Italian Baroque from the Austrian Rococo. And our poor piece would be deemed worthy of the most august programmes. It's an interesting argument, isn't it? You pass off a piece that sounds like Haydn as if it's Haydn, and everyone thinks, great, it's by Haydn, what a fine piece, or not, depending on how well you do it. But if you then claim that it's by Mendelssohn, people say it's old-fashioned and relatively poor. If you passed it off as a piece by Vivaldi, people would say, what an amazingly forward-looking work. And you judge the piece not by its own merits, but by some almost random notion connected with the date of its composition, which surely shouldn't really be the criteria by which you judge the value of a piece of music. Let me know your thoughts, but I think he's onto something here. I think that the essential value of music cannot merely be because it was written on such and such a date. That isn't what matters, is it? Of course, it's important to have some notion of history when we listen to music. Otherwise, you listen to Baroque music and say it's boring because it doesn't sound like Tchaikovsky or something. But essentially, music doesn't progress and get better. That's another really interesting thing for us to talk about.